Okay, yeah. So we're back. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so, um, photobiomodulation, getting out in the sun, that's part of that maintenance. So,
Amen.
so what about like some of the science and the benefits around cellular repair? I know that's a big one that you hear when people talk about near infrared light therapy. Um, you know, what could you tell us about that, about cellular repair, and too, like some of the um, like I know it's not a lot of hard science, but there's some implications that uh, some autoimmune dysfunctions or disorders. A lot of people see a lot of improvements using near infrared light therapy. Also,
Man, this is really exciting to kind of break this down with you specifically. And let me preface this by saying I have a tendency to kind of talk at a more scientific level and not really break it down digestible into digestible pieces. So let's really start at the root, at the foundation of how all of this works. And I think we've laid some pretty good groundwork to help people connect the dots.
yeah,
So um, we know that the cell is the functional unit of the body, right? We have trillions of cells and they're all communicating and engaging with each other in their own way to make sure that all of these different functionalities that we have in our body are working appropriately. Okay,
hmm,
so then we go even deeper into the cell and we say there's these different components of the cell. We call them organelles. Each organelle has its own role, own responsibility, right? And then we have a nucleus, and the nucleus houses our genetic material, our DNA, and it writes the script for how the cell functions and what it does, right? So all the cells have the same DNA, but the DNA is used in different ways to produce different proteins, different molecules, and things that a heart cell needs versus a nervous cell, or versus an intestinal cell, or versus a
yeah,
kidney cell. And so I think sometimes it's a little bit challenging for somebody who hasn't taken biology or hasn't taken physiology to really encapsulate how all of this stuff works. But that's really the framework. And I oftentimes um, use an analogy of like a city, right? So each cell is like its own little city, and it has government buildings and post office and fire department and police department and all of these different functionalities. And so again, the mitochondria is the power plant of the city. So
hmm,
it's producing, all of this energy grid for everything to work. So you can think of it as a as a refinery or a coal mine or a solar panel, a solar farm, however you want to think about that. But it is producing the energy that makes the cell go, and
yeah,
thus makes the tissues go and the organs go and the organ systems go. Okay. So this light, specifically near infrared light, is 15% of the sunlight that we are experiencing on a day-to-day basis.
okay,
So the research is very clear that near infrared light has the capability to enhance the way the body produces certain key molecules that are valuable for how the body functions. All right.
okay,
So let's use one example called glutathione. All right. So glutathione has become really popular. It's encapsulated. They put it in IV bags. Like if you go to an IV nutrition therapy center, they use it in a variety of different ways.
hmm,
And glutathione is really valuable for the system because it is a master antioxidant. Some scientists believe it is the most important antioxidant. And so you can imagine that in a chaotic city where all of these features and functions are happening on a regular basis, there can be some byproducts, some exhaust, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
from the mitochondria, right? Any power plant is going to take in what it needs and then spit out what it needs, right? And in addition to the valuable things that it needs, there's also some byproduct. And so what happens in our cells as we get older, as we age, as we deal with stress and environmental factors and various different things, the cell gets overwhelmed with smog. Let's call it smog for lack of a
Okay.
better functional explanation. So what glutathione does is it comes in and it's the garbage man. It kind of cleans up this byproduct and makes sure that the internal environment of the cell is clean. So you can imagine that's invaluable,
Yeah.
invaluable. All right. And so the body naturally makes this glutathione because it recognizes that it needs to eliminate these toxins, these heavy metals. It needs to influence the immune system to do various different things. So there's great papers, great research. You can go on PubMed.gov, you can go on Google Scholar, you can type in glutathione, you can type in light therapy, and you'll see that certain frequencies of light on the near infrared light spectrum enhance the production of glutathione because as we age, have poor nutrition, stress, not sleeping right, all the things, right? All the things that everybody knows they're dealing with, it tanks the production of glutathione. So anything we can do that enhances the production of glutathione,
Yeah.
anything we can do to get more glutathione in the system is going to be a value add, right? Because it's going to help clean out those cells. It's going to help eliminate those heavy metals and toxins and things that we are experiencing because of the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, etc. It's not 100% pure. So there's always going to be something that finds its way into the system that we need to properly eliminate. So that photobiomodulation that you're experiencing from a morning walk, from an evening walk, from 15 minutes sitting in a chair in your backyard or on your front porch or whatever the case may be, has the capability to enhance the production, amplify the production of molecules like glutathione that are extremely valuable in creating longevity and helping your body to be at an optimal level. So, I mean, that's kind of what we talk about a lot on my podcast
Hmm.
is how you stimulate the function that's needed to enhance those molecules. And obviously, direct connection with the sun is an extremely powerful way to do so. And then also, you have all of these different innovations and products and things like that that also
Yeah.
help to do that as well without the sun.
Yeah. We definitely want to unpack some of that too, and I'm glad you brought that up because um, light is on a spectrum, and one of the biggest um, some of the biggest resistance I get from people when I encourage them to get out in the sun is UV light being burned, right? From overexposure to UV light. And I started to realize that most people are so afraid of the sun because they only uh, go out with the intention of being in it in the afternoon. And most people are just kind of in passing in the morning, just hopping in the car, going to work, and they
Yeah.
never really have a really intimate experience with the sun. And I could attest that waking up every morning before the sunrise and exercising as it comes over the horizon, oh man, it's a huge noticeable difference than when I don't do that. Like it's night and day. I sleep better when I do it in the evening, have more energy for longer throughout the day when I do it in the morning. So you mentioned some
100%.
of yeah, and so you mentioned some of uh, the therapies that are available. And I know you offer one as well. But I know one of the key things, one of the biggest benefits to a lot of the therapies is you can pinpoint, you can target specific areas on the body for longer periods of time without the risk of overexposure to UV light. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one perk for sure.
Okay.
And so let's just kind of unpack a few of the light therapy systems that are available to us at this particular time. And just to be clear, this is a really hot topic, right? This is a
Hmm.
big research area right now. So there's a lot of things in development that are happening, but available right now on the market are a few things. Um, One, they actually have light bulbs, right? So
Hmm.
you can put these light bulbs into your home or into a particular room in your home or a particular closet or what have you, and you can sit inside and this infrared light bulb will bathe you with the light that you need, right? So in that instance, the UV elements or the unhealthy components of being in the sun are eliminated, right?
Yeah.
They also have saunas that are the same way. You can purchase a sauna, build it, have it in your home, or you can go to a particular location where they have an infrared sauna. You sit in it for 30 minutes or so. Usually that's the sufficient amount of time. And the cool part about those saunas, it's not like your typical sauna. When people think sauna, they think, oh, I'm going to sweat and it's going to be hot. In reality, you can sit in these infrared saunas with your clothes on and mind your business, get online, read, do whatever you want to do. It's not one of these intense things where you have to take all your clothes off and sweat, etc. They now are
Do
moving. Go ahead.
does material deflect some of the infrared light, or it penetrates just fine?
It can penetrate through clothes.
Okay.
Obviously, if you wanted to do, take the clothes off, like if you had one at home, I would encourage you to get in there with your skinnies or your underwear on as best as possible. You want to expose as much skin.
Yeah.
That's going to make the biggest difference. However, that's not like a requirement. Infrared light is pretty great with penetrating through clothing items and into the skin several inches deep.
Okay.
Uh, and then they have now infrared beds, which is the new hot thing. So imagine um, like an equivalent to what you would see with a tanning bed. Literally you climb in, you lay down, and you close the top on top of you. So you're getting light on your front side and on your back side. So that's like infrared on steroids in comparison to the sauna or the light bulb or even the really dynamic life wave patches. And that's the last, but what I think is really a really dynamic system of its own. So about 20 years ago, the founder of this organization was tasked by the Department of Defense to help special operatives like Navy SEALs and Green Berets and Army Rangers find a natural solution to fatigue and cognitive decline when on long missions. So typically, and you know this better than anybody as a military person, that missions, long missions, 36 hours, 48 hours, you're having to stay alert, you're having to stay focused, you're having to put demand on your body for this long period of time. And what are the alternatives, right? Amphetamines, caffeine, drugs that eventually are going to cause you to crash. So they were
Yep.
noticing that the reports from a lot of these special ops guys was like, hey man, I run into a wall at such and such a time and I can't be my full self. And it's putting my platoon at risk because I'm not operating at 100%, and if I'm operating at 50%, I'm not as capable or clear minded to do all of the little things that need to be done to make sure we all go home safely. So they put some money into Mr. Schmidt and he created the first LifeWave patch. And it was all about finding ways to move stagnated chi. And what he was able to conclude was that people not only had more energy and more stamina, but they could perform at higher capabilities. Right. So this led to a lot of really awesome research. And then guess what? That was right around the time 9/11 happened. So you could put it
Yeah.
together that they kind of moved the direction, the focus to some things that are a little bit more significant at that particular time. Luckily
Hmm.
for us, that gave him the opportunity to bring this research to the civilian sector. And so he launched the company and has since produced 10, 11 other patches that are really valuable, and they have their own unique way in which they work, all based upon photobiomodulation or light therapy, but unique to what molecule they help you to produce.
Yeah.
And you might be asking, well, where does the light come from? Guess what? As above, so below. Our bodies actually produce infrared light. It's a form of heat. And if you
Yes.
don't believe me, just take a look at
Look
some
at
of
the
those
Animal
spy
Channel.
movies. Yeah, those spy movies and things like that where you wear the night vision goggles. You're looking for those red and yellow
Hmm.
images in the distance because that shows that somebody has a heat signature. And that heat signature is actually a form of light. We just don't see it with the human eye, which is why we have to wear those goggles. So our human eye visual spectrum is actually very narrow, right? But there are so many other forms of light and wavelengths of light that are on either side of our visual spectrum. So you have infrared, you have X-ray, you have gamma ray, you have all of these different ones. And so what we have found in the clinical research as people have gotten more into this is that both far and near infrared light have what we call, healing capabilities, meaning that it stimulates the body to be well, primarily because it boosts and amplifies these different molecules like a glutathione. It boosts mitochondrial function. It helps to increase stem cell capability. It helps to deal with melatonin and cortisol. I mean, you talked about being out and about in the morning. That is one of the most powerful things you can do if you're having challenges sleeping, right? Sunlight in the eye directly in the morning, it helps to stimulate cortisol. So it's going to
Hmm.
wake you up. You don't need coffee. You don't need all of these other things to get going. You have a natural sort of energy boost because your body says, "Hey, let's grace the day. The sun is out. We're here." Same thing on in the evening as the light goes down, as the sun goes down, we then begin to stimulate melatonin. And melatonin comes from the pineal gland and helps us to calm down and get ready for bed. So before we had houses and lighting and electricity and all of this, when the sun went down, it was time for us to get to go to sleep.
Hmm.
So there was this natural sort of circadian rhythm that develops because when the sun comes up, we're going to start our day. When the sun goes down, we're kind of getting inside and getting relaxed and getting ready for sleep. And so because we have a 24/7 society now, a lot of those things are out of whack, but that the sunlight in your eyes is a huge thing as well as on your skin.
Agreed. Agreed. Look, you're giving away my regimen every morning. No, but that's what this is for, though. This is, um, but yeah, it's fascinating. Like there's lots and lots of stories and reports and research that talks about how when patients are near the window in the hospital, they recover uh, faster. When um, in some instances where hospitals didn't have enough room and they had to start putting patients outside. Uh, a lot of the patients in the sun recovered a lot faster than the patients who were in the hospital who were um, able to get the bulk of the treatment. The sun was the added benefit. Um, and I could attest personal experience with being in remote places. I was sharing this with someone else. you feel more energized, and the desire to consume is a lot lower.
Man.
And that was something that fascinated me for years. And as you know, like we know each other, and just kind of been on this inward quest to try and understand a lot of these experiences in a scientific way, so we could have conversations like this and help people tap in more to who they are and what they're capable of and what we're capable of.
So, bringing things full circle, I've had conversations with people not about them attempting to introduce Breatharianism into their life,
Mm-hmm.
but just to give some context to what the body's capable of, even just to do a fast. I give people the opportunity to do a little research and digging on Breatharianism. There's books, there's articles, there's research, there's all this kind of stuff. So a lot of people, like I said,
It's okay. It didn't say we got interrupted this time, so let's keep rolling.
okay. Um, so what I was saying is that most people's connection to food precludes them from really understanding what's plausible. And I think because we're so civilized now, right? We don't have the same connection with nature. And even if it's just the simplest connection with nature, going out in the sun in the morning, grounding by having your feet in the grass, just breathing outside air and really working on some good breath work strategies. I think, not I think, I know that our medical system makes things a little too complicated, in my opinion. We have all this nomenclature, we have all of these CPT codes, we have all of these diagnoses. And the reality is the body is in dis-ease. All right. Breaking that down, you should be easy. You should be balanced. You should be in homeostasis. All your hormones and your functions should work harmoniously with each other. The moment that they aren't, you're starting to develop dis-ease. And we get to the point to where said dis-ease becomes so serious that it creates symptoms that make us feel uncomfortable with our current activities of daily living, right? But the dis-ease has been there for much longer than the symptoms, right? The symptoms are the check engine light that you haven't been putting the right fuel in the tank the whole time. So, I love what you said about camping, hiking, going out in nature. When you're eating, let's say, for example, I'll use this show Alone. I don't know if you've ever watched this show,
Mm-hmm.
but
Oh
man,
yeah.
it's a really interesting situation, man, because these people are put in isolation in very remote locations and you're forced to live off the land.
Mm-hmm.
And so, same thing with them. They're getting up in the morning right as sun goes up because I got to get my full day because I
Yep.
don't have flashlights. I don't have all of this stuff. And the reality is I'm at a disadvantage because my visual spectrum is so narrow at night. I don't see like the rest of these animals out here. And so I need to be in my cabin with my fire burning, making sure that I'm ready to go for the next day. So I say all that to say, if you're eating salmon fresh out of the water that's never been frozen, hasn't been raised in a farm, etc., or you shot a squirrel or a hare or something like that, and that's what you're consuming, you're getting fresh macromolecule meat um, that is enhanced because it comes straight from nature, right? You're getting direct sunlight. You're getting fresh air. You're a lot of those things. And I think the other element that's really interesting is you're freeing your mind, right? You don't have a cell phone. You don't have internet. You don't have somebody emailing you about a job or a circumstance. So anxiety, emotional fluctuations. I mean, you have other elements, right? Loneliness and things like that. But I think that's actually a natural human response to desire social communication, social interaction, versus being anxious about some job or some bill or something like that. So I just wish that we had scenarios and situations where chronic illness was treated in that way, where we put somebody in an isolated remote situation, and there's lots of different places, ashrams and
Yeah.
different religious areas where they just totally take you away from all of that, and
Mhm.
miraculously you get better.
Yes,
So
sir.
I I I think that our traditional allopathic healthcare system has a lot of good things and a lot of value to it, but there's some areas where I think there's a lot of things that need to change. There's a lot of things that need to come to all of the information that we have needs to be incorporated in a shift in the way certain areas of our healthcare system are provided.
Yeah, no, and I definitely see that, and a whole lot of what you said has been my experience too. And I would add one more element if I could, and that would be the joy aspect. So,
Mhm.
like when people are on the show, for instance, there's there's still this, they're competing for money. Um, but I would go as far to say if they were just living that life just for the heck of it, and the money wasn't an
It would
issue,
take on another animal. Yep.
it would
Yep. Yep.
take
Yep.
on a whole. Yep. So um, I don't want to leave out the joy aspect or underestimate that, because I know in my experience when I've like had those experiences, I was in places that I was excited to be in too. And so a lot of the desires and stressors and all of those things were just non-existent, and I was just able to go. I mean, like, have food poison one time, and I do a lot of breath exercises and things like that, and we're out in the jungle, and I was walking miles upon miles for 6 days with no food. Felt fantastic, and I've had other experiences like that too, but um, and I'm out there with folks, with other buddies. They got sick too, and I'm trying to tell them how amazing I feel, and this is just going in one ear and out the
Disconnect.
other.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
man, I'm feeling horrible, man, and I'm hungry. Like, I'm trying to figure out if I should eat this chicken or not. And you talking about you feel great. Like, it was just, but for a brief moment, the trip was a little stressful because I got sick. But for the rest of the trip, I was just as light as a feather, man. I was as easy as the breeze. And when you have those experiences like that, like they change you forever. Um, and just changing subjects a little bit, one of the kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up, unless you had anything else that you wanted to share or we didn't cover, was on my channels. I'm a big proponent of doing qigong and tai chi and breath exercises and meditation and any type of physical exercise, but specifically those because they slightly increase your heart rate, but they do increase a lot of oxygen in your blood, which has a whole lot of added benefits in and with of itself. But could you speak to maybe some of the benefits of doing those um, in the sunlight, the morning sun?
Yeah. So it's really interesting that you incorporated that component because that's one thing that I didn't mention. But the patches that I have become very familiar with personally and professionally over the last 5 years from LifeWave, you actually apply them to acupuncture locations. And the founder is a big practicer of Qigong. And so there's just so many elements that I think we're missing because when we think about physical exercise, we think about running, we think about jogging, we think about lifting weights, we think about Pilates and yoga, and all of those things are valuable. Don't get me wrong, but some of the oldest living people, they do Tai Chi, and that's all they do. And so there's definitely a huge component to flexibility and range of motion and oxygenation, because there's a breathwork element involved in your Tai Chi principles and practice. And so you're absolutely right, man. And then if you incorporate that with doing it outside and doing it in the sunlight, doing it barefoot in the grass, I mean, you're layering all of the different things that we've talked about throughout the discussion today that are extremely powerful to prevent said dis-ease, to prevent the development of these issues. And so I love that idea. And, you know, underneath the surface, the body is so sophisticated that almost to the point to where you just have to decide, hey, I got a pretty good understanding of the way the body works, right? I've been studying the body for 20 years now, right? Um, and I think the interesting part about it is I've come to the point to know I know what I know, and then there's an element that is just left to the divine creator who put the body together, and you just respect that, right? You respect that this flow of chi energy moves through the body, and if you can help it to move the way that it needs to move, this is the foundation for being at optimal health, right? If you get oxygen into the system, all of these trillions of cells need those oxygen molecules. So it's an ideal situation to fill your lungs and to really force oxygen in. If not once a day, more than once a day, right?
Yeah.
Because also we have very shallow breathing. We have all of these different factors that challenge the ability to take big breaths, right? We're talking, we can't take long exasperated breaths. So you need to just take time to be able to do that, because that has been shown to be extremely valuable. So yeah, man, for all the reasons, I think a good regimen of any kind, right? Work your way up, continue to add things, incorporate things. But if you can be disciplined and incorporate a daily routine into your programming, man, it's one of the most powerful things you can do for your health.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. And I know you saying that'll go a long way for a lot of people who may have some doubts, just because they've tried other exercises in the past, but and didn't have success. But for some reason, for a lot of reasons you just spoke about, um, those very subtle exercises, they get things moving in a way, and kind of get you closer to homeostasis, and but yeah, and Dr. Jeff, I greatly, greatly appreciate us, being able to do this together. It's been a while since we had a conversation like this. We both been kind of busy on our own paths, making some things happen. So it's always a pleasure when we get to, come back together and connect. And I'm very, very, very grateful.
Same here, bro. Anytime, man. These kind of conversations are just therapeutic, and the potential for what they can do for other people who may be tuning in and listening is just really the cherry on top. It's the icing on the cake. We iron sharp as iron, right? So we always connect in our own ways to support each other, man. But recording it and kind of putting it out there, you don't hear many conversations like this. This is not mainstream social media. This is not mainstream TV, especially uh, two humans getting together on a conversation like this. So, yeah, man, I totally want to just kind of say one other element. You mentioned before that people are worried about sunlight because it could have implications. The UV light could do this, or I know sometimes we may not want to sweat, or we may not want to have our hair be messed up, or whatever clothing, get whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
This is so much more important than any of those things. So, find the time. I know you're an early riser. Even if you have to just take some time at your lunch break, eat your lunch outside, man. Eat your lunch in the sun. Go walk around. Park your car a little bit farther than you usually do, so it takes you 5 minutes to get in the door. Just anything you can do to get more sunlight is a value add, because we haven't talked about vitamin D. That's another key element that is synthesized by being in the sunlight, and you just simply can't have enough vitamin D. So that's a really, really powerful thing, specifically for melanated people, because we're further from the equator than our genetics are usually associated with. So having more vitamin D is a huge benefit to your health overall.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But and before we get out of here, I'll make sure I get some links from you to where people can learn more about what you offer. That and it's part of our whole conversation is to let people know there are other ways to get some of these benefits if for some reason their lifestyle don't permit them to get into the sun. So I definitely want to connect some of those folks with you too. So um, it's been a pleasure, and I'm gonna stop recording, logging off.
All right, man. See you in a bit.